Violent demonstrations broke out near Ireland's capital Dublin on Tuesday night, with as many as 2,000 protesters clashing with police. They're outside the Citywest hotel in Saggart, a village southwest of Dublin, being used to house asylum seekers, one of whom, a 26-year-old African man, was charged in connection to an alleged sexual assault on a 10-year-old victim in the area. The child is said to be in state care, but had absconded during a trip to the city centre. A small group had protested on Monday night, but on Tuesday, social media and Telegram channels had escalated it to thousands. Some wearing face masks launched fireworks and threw bottles at lines of riot police protecting the building. Others even broke down nearby walls to launch bricks and mortar at their lines. Some waved Irish flags and held up placards with anti-immigrant messages. There were a number of children and young teenagers taking part. Police were drafted in from across the region with 300 officers deployed, some with riot shields and helmets, others were horse-mounted. They also used larger and more powerful pepper sprays, some as big as fire extinguishers, to target the rioters. One of their vans was set alight. Some of those rioting used laser pens in a bid to blind the pilot of the police helicopter and crew of a water cannon vehicle, which was making its first appearance on the streets of the Republic. 6 protesters were arrested, with more expected to be tracked down from social media footage.
And Garda Síochána had a policing operation in place for this public gathering, organised by disparate groups on social media who stir up hatred and violence and encourage and entice others to get involved. I would like to commend my colleagues who are on duty tonight for their professionalism, courage and resilience.
Ireland's Prime Minister Micheál Martin paid tribute to the police's response, saying in a statement, "I strongly condemn the violent disorder that unfolded in Citywest in Dublin this evening. There can be no justification for the vile abuse against police or the attempted assaults and attacks on members of the force that will shock all right-thinking people." As in many European countries, demonstrations against immigrants and refugees have become common in Ireland in recent years. In November 2023, protests turned to riots in Dublin after an Algerian man stabbed 3 children outside a primary school. 60 police officers were injured and €20 million worth of damage was caused to the city centre. Demonstrations have continued regularly, with successive governments accused of allowing too many arrivals, exacerbating the housing crisis and driving violent crime. Far-right agitators have used social media and rallies to spread a message that Ireland is full. Irish voters are set to go to the polls on Friday to elect a new president. Both candidates were taking part in a final TV debate last night and reacted to the events.
It's deeply disturbing, and I think it's time for leadership from politicians, and indeed as president, but I'm not president tonight, to use our voices to show leadership and to actually analyse what's happening here and stop conflating things.
Heather Humphreys also condemned the violence. She served as a government minister for much of the past decade and emphasised how reliant the country is on immigrant labour.
We need immigrants in this country, there's no question about that. We need people to work in our hospitals, to work in our care services, to work in many, many different parts of our economy. We need workers here. So I agree that people should be able to come here on work permits and come here legally, and that is, but for those people who shouldn't be here, who are coming here illegally, we need to process them quickly, and if they shouldn't be here, they need to go back to their own countries or where they came from.
Though the position of president is largely ceremonial, hard-right candidates like former MMA fighter Conor McGregor attempted to run on the issue of immigration. Whilst they were unsuccessful, Ireland, a nation of immigrants going back generations, is undergoing a period of soul-searching as economic pressures are shifting traditionally welcoming attitudes. Well, we're joined now by Eimer McAuley, a reporter for the Journal. Eimer, thank you for speaking with us. You were there last night. Can you describe what you saw?
Yeah, there were scenes of absolute chaos there last night. There were hundreds of people. It was really shoulder to shoulder. They were lined up, in a large crowd. That initially started as a peaceful protest, but quickly became violent. Towards the entrance of the Citywest Hotel, where asylum seekers are housed by the state. There was a Garda van on fire halfway through the crowd. Occasionally, it was making sounds like it might blow, so people were stampeding back from it. And then further up, where the crowd, where they were actually hurling bricks and missiles at Gardaí as well as glass bottles. People were stampeding back when public order unit Gardaí were trying to push them back. They were in lines with shields. They were coming under pretty relentless fire from the rioters, and one Garda was injured. We know that, and has received medical treatment today. So it was really a volatile scene last night. People gathered from around 7, and by 7:30, we really had a riot on our hands.
And the crowds of rioters themselves, were they local people or were they had people who had travelled in because of what they'd seen on social media?
So 2 days ago, there was an alleged sexual assault on a young girl in the area by a man who has now been charged, and appeared before the courts. And there were local people who had concerns about that, and maybe you would have seen some of them on the perimeter of the crowd. But as you went in, it was really masked men and youths who were attacking Gardaí. There was Gardaí have said today that their intelligence shows that this was planned violence that was orchestrated online. The main sort of posts that went around on social media and Telegram groups featured the logo of a far right vigilante group that encourages people to patrol centres where immigrants are being housed. So there's definitely an element of that last night, and some of the posts that were put up by that group were actually taken down by TikTok and other platforms last night. So there's definitely an organised element to this, and Gardaí are aware of that here in Ireland, and Gardaí are monitoring that very closely. Some people who were live streaming it had actually flown over from England and said that in their live streams. People who look for these kind of scenes of violence to create content, which I know you've seen in the UK, different public disorder incidents like this one. So you did have concerned locals on the outside, but as you went in, it was really like mob mentality, people with their faces covered. But you also had people who were posing with tricolours in front of the burning Garda van, with their faces uncovered, who didn't seem to be that worried about being identified as being there, even though Gardaí were monitoring the situation.
And for background, there were large riots in Dublin back in November 2023. 60 police officers were injured, millions of euros of damage. It seemed last night that the police have not only upgraded their training, but their equipment as well, deploying a water cannon for the first time.
Yeah, I think lessons have been learned from the Dublin riots. The thing that felt quite scary about this last night is we were on one narrow road. So reporters who were there were having to sprint back when the crowd sprinted back. And it also left some of the lines of public order unit Gardaí quite vulnerable. But they got the situation under control by around 11 p.m. They had the mounted units. There were Gardaí on horseback. There were Gardaí with dogs. There was a helicopter overhead. And then that water cannon was there. It wasn't actually used, but the deputy commissioner has said that they think the presence of it will have kind of helped. And I think we probably saw much wider use of incapacitant spray as well. In the crowd, there were lots of people trying to get pepper spray out of their eyes with water. So that was being used quite widely as well as a means of trying to, de-escalate the violence. So I think lessons have been learned. During the Dublin riots, the Gardaí had to ask the PSNI in Northern Ireland, who would have lots of experience of policing riots, to use their water cannons. So I guess you could say that the situation has become one where we're anticipating more of this kind of violence, but we're also more prepared for it.
And you've been back at the scene this morning. What's it like there, and what's been the reaction to what happened more widely?
There's a real sense of shock there from locals. I think people feel scared. Sagar is quite a multicultural place. There's lots of people working there in the shops who have are immigrants in Ireland themselves. I think people feel scared about their safety. I spoke to one man who couldn't get into his house last night because of the crowds. He had actually turned out to peacefully protest because he thought it was going to be a sort of solidarity thing with the young girl who was allegedly assaulted. And as soon as he saw Gardaí being attacked, he left. There was another man I spoke to who said that his daughter is training to be a Garda, and he felt really scared when he saw the kind of fire that frontline Gardaí were coming under last night. And then I spoke to one asylum seeker who lives in the centre, and he said that people are really scared in there right now about coming in and out, about going into the village to get stuff from the shop. I think people know, who are living in the centre, that it wasn't the people from the area who were doing the violence and the worst of the rioting that we saw last night at all. But they're still scared about how they will get in and out and whether we're going to see this again tonight. And Gardaí do think that there's a good chance that we will see similar scenes tonight, maybe not on the same scale, but it's likely to happen again. That's what's happened in the past when we've had this level of violence.
And sadly, there is a young girl who is a victim at the core of all this. Was there much sort of genuine concern by the rioters last night for her? Or, as you say, was this people looking to exploit this situation for wider purposes?
Yeah, I think nationally there is concern. Everyone's concerned about the well-being of that girl, and I think everyone's thoughts are with her. However, in that riot last night, I can tell you that there were no chants about the Child and Protection Agency here in Ireland, who, that child was in their care at the time that they say she absconded from their care, and then this incident happened, this alleged incident. There were no chants about that. The chants were "Make Ireland Great Again." Ireland is for the Irish, and get them out, in reference to the asylum seekers who live in the centre. So it really did seem to be motivated by, hatred.